Hey there, everybody, and welcome. Today, I am going to be presenting a full tutorial and a partial two-player playthrough of Campaign Trail. Campaign Trail is a strategy board game in which players are vying to be elected President of the United States. It was designed on paper and not for the public by David Cornelius some 45 years ago or so. Developed into a full-fledged board game by his two sons, Nathan and Jeff, over the past decade or so. The game currently features three political parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Libertarians, and it can be played by 1 to 3 players or in team form by 4 to 6 players, in which one teammate would act as the presidential candidate and the other would act as the vice presidential candidate. I should mention that Nathan and Jeff are talking about possibly adding a fourth political party down the road, but currently it features the three, the Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians. Well, as you can see, I am not going to be using my board game pieces today, but rather I'm going to be using a program I've developed for my own personal enjoyment. If you've watched or subscribed to any of my other 50-plus tutorials and playthroughs, you know that this is what I like to do. I find that I can more easily explain and present the game, in, whether it be solo or multiplayer playthrough that way. I don't have to be zooming a camera every which way. And also, my program, I should point out, helps to ensure that I'm presenting the game correctly, obviously, if the program's programmed correctly. And I'll be making few, if any, errors along the way. It goes without saying, if you like this video, please, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. Well, before I embark on the tutorial and the playthrough, I have to first choose my political parties and my candidates. I'm going to be playing the Democrats today, and I'm going to be playing against a fictitious person named Alex. She's going to be portraying the Republicans. I've set her up to be female. I've set me up, obviously, to be male. There's 12 or so different candidate personas in the game. Each candidate has its own special rule-breaking advantage, along with a disadvantage that's also unique to that candidate. So when playing the game, players are going to draw 2 candidates at random and choose one. The game portrays half the candidates as being easier to play than the other half, so I am going to check this box to limit my choices among the easier of the candidates. I should say right up front that while you can watch this video to learn the game and see how it plays, you shouldn't be watching this video if you want to learn how to play well. First of all, in general, I'm going to be making choices relatively quickly most of the time, and I'm going to be making those choices based on what I want to demonstrate a lot of the time. So don't expect to come away from this video with any great strategic ideas. So let's see. So my choices are the establishment candidate and the outsider. The candidate's advantage, by the way, and disadvantage, as you can see, is shown at the top of the screen. And at this point, these descriptions probably aren't going to make a lot of sense until I start going into how the game plays. I think I'm going to choose the outsider. And I'm going to have Alex choose the party favorite. So the outsider, my advantage is that when I take and advertise a campaign or a Politick action, I get to place one voter from the undecided voter supply. That's the main supply. Think of it in that terms. Into the reference state of the card that I've played. But my disadvantage is that my campaign actions cost me $80 million instead of the usual $60 million. Alex, on the other hand, as the party favorite, for each of her actions that results in voters being placed into states, she gets to place 2 of them, again, from the main undecided voter supply, as opposed to her registered party's voter supply, which is her own personal supply of voters. You may include these 2 when determining if you have enough voters to fill every state in an issue. For an advertise action, again, that's going to be more clear once I start describing these actions. When she takes a campaign action, she cannot place more than 3 voters into any one state. So that's her limitation. The game also comes with a dirty politics module with which you can optionally add some 24 more aggressive take that type of cards to the normal 105 card deck, but I am not going to be playing with that expansion today for purposes of this playthrough. Just imagine that it's more, the cards are more aggressive and they have more, take that. All right. The blue boxes represent the number of voters in each state for the Democrats currently, and the red boxes represent the Republican Party. If I was playing with the Libertarians, there'd be a yellow box as well. As part of setup, each player also has to choose a home state where they're going to start the game. Once you choose a home state, that player is going to start with an additional 2 voters in their home state. They choose one of their starting cards. You see I have a hand of 5 cards here at the bottom of the screen. And they're going to set their home state to the card's reference state, which is shown along the top edge of the card. So I can choose Minnesota, which has 10 electoral votes. That's what that number to the right represents. I could, my home state could be New York, which has 29 electoral votes. Coincidentally, another card with Minnesota as the reference state on the top. This one, it looks like it's Illinois, 20 electoral votes. And over here I've got Oklahoma with 7 electoral votes. So I have to make a choice. I think I'm going to go ahead with Minnesota and choose Minnesota. You can see I currently start in Minnesota with 1 electoral vote, but again, because I have that home state advantage, once I select my home state, I'm going to start the game with 1 committed voter currently, but then I'll get 2 more, and I'll start in Minnesota with a total of 3 committed voters to the Republicans' 0. I don't have to play this card or discard it from my hand. I just have to choose it, so I'm going to go ahead and choose it. And now you can see that my committed voters in Minnesota are up to 3 now. This is Alex's hand, so Alex can choose from Oregon, North Carolina, 15 electoral votes. Over here we've got Connecticut with 7. Looks like Wisconsin with 10, and Massachusetts with 11. I think I'm going to stick again to the center of the country. I think I'm going to have Alex start in Wisconsin. Yeah. So Alex is going to choose Wisconsin, and her votes are going to go bump up to 2. So where I previously had the majority of 1 to 0 in Wisconsin, she now has the majority of 2 Republican votes to my 1 Democratic voter. So she now has the majority in her home state. When she gains those 10 electoral votes, again, since we're playing a 2-player game, I lose the same 10 electoral votes. So there's a difference of 20 votes there. And you can see that the game is now starting with the Republicans at 279 electoral votes to my 259 electoral votes. My program's making the scorekeeping rather easy here, but when you're actually playing the game comes with this nice, really thick electoral track, sort of like a big ruler, if you will, but it's a track where you take all the state tokens which are proportionally sized relative to the number of electoral votes that the state contributes. So, for instance, California, with its 55 electoral votes, is going to be 5 times bigger than, let's say, a state like Arizona, which only has 11 electoral votes. It's real neat. So you kind of put all these little state tokens into these tracks, whether it be the Republican or the Democratic or the Libertarian track, and once you have all the states sort of lined up in the track, you basically get an idea of how many electoral votes they have. Now, we're playing with cardboard, so the tolerances are not exactly 100% accurate, so the game does encourage you to count the actual number of electoral votes in the case where it's really close. The game board is primarily a map of the United States of America, consisting of the 50 states, as well as the capital, Washington, D.C. Each state indicates the Electoral College vote that state contributes, I guess, to the election process. As opposed to an election based on the popular vote, the Founding Fathers described or decided to use an Electoral College system that primarily, I think, is a way to give more weight to the decisions of quote-unquote, I think, educated men who would vote based on a candidate's qualities rather than the degree to which, I don't know, the candidate would sway them, I suppose, or sway the public one way or another. Sounds kind of modern, doesn't it? I think it was also a compromise maybe to the smaller states who wanted more representation than their population might otherwise afford. So the minimum number of electoral votes any one state can have is 3, regardless of their population, which I think is the same minimum as far as their representation as Congress is concerned as well. The electors pretty much ignore the concepts behind the system as was originally defined, and instead these days they just apply a winner-takes-all approach. So part of the reason why so many people, I guess, have argued to do away with the electoral system over the years, and I think that's the extent of the history lesson I'm going to provide today. I am no presidential historian, to be sure. Frankly, I'm no historian, to be sure. So that's about as much as I remember from my days of taking social studies in high school. In addition, the electoral votes, the game's going to assign each state a primary and a secondary tiebreaker in the event that no particular party has a majority in that state. It uses this system to ensure that every player starts the game with an equivalent number of electoral votes. Let's take an example of, say, Iowa. Where are you, Iowa? Right here. My geography is not great. So Iowa, as you can see, has 6 electoral votes. That it's part of the Great Plains region, colored violet here. Its primary tiebreaker is the Republican Party, and its secondary tiebreaker is the Democratic Party. In the event you wouldn't be playing a game, you'd be playing a game without the Republican Party, then the secondary tiebreaker would then click in, and that's the Democratic Party. But I am playing with the Democrats and the Republicans today, so the Republicans would break a tie in Iowa. Now, currently, Iowa has 2 Republican voters against my 0 Democratic voters. Each state has an issue that's tied to that particular state. In the case of Iowa, the issue was immigration, but in the state of Texas, there are 2 issues that Texas voters focus on: education and gun control. And I think most of the states basically are assigned 1 issue, but the bigger ones like Texas and California over here on the in the Pacific coast, we can see that California's 55 electoral votes focus on gender equality and international trade. There's another way that states can be grouped. Each party has 5 ethically minded states assigned to it. So How do I do that in my program? Oh, yeah. So for the Democrats, the ethical United States are the ones that are flashing, Washington and all the ones along the East Coast here, as opposed to the Republicans' ethical United States, which are mostly in the South, and the Libertarians' ethically minded states are these: Oregon, Colorado, and so forth. So my program has already set up the starting votes for each state. Basically, the rules say that each state relies on the primary tiebreaker in the game, and that state is assigned 2 voters for the appropriate party. But in states that rely on the secondary tiebreaker, because let's say the primary tiebreaker would be the limit to, like up here in Alaska, where the primary tiebreaker are the Libertarians, we have to fall back on the Republicans as the secondary tiebreaker in that case, which is why they start with 1 vote to my 0 votes. So if you're relying on the secondary tiebreaker, the rules say you start with 1 vote in that state, but if you're relying on the primary tiebreaker, you start with 2 electoral votes in that state. All that is done so that each player starts with roughly the same number of electoral votes. Over on the right, you can see that I keep track of each party's war chest, how much money they have available to spend, as well as the number of their registered voters. Now, all that's based on the candidates we chose. So because I chose the outsider, I start the game with $60 million. Normally, I would start the game with $60 million and 4 decided voters. But because I'm playing as 1 player, I'm going to start the game with double the candidate's allocation of money and voters. So if you're playing a team game, each member of the team would have the amount of money and voters that is specified on their particular candidate. But if when you're not playing separate presidential and vice presidential candidates, you get to just double the amount of money and voters you start with, again, to keep the game from starting too slowly. Okay, that's enough about the board. Let me quickly describe what each card looks like, and then we'll be able to get underway. In this game, players can play a card on their turn and take one of 3 direct actions that generally result in voters being placed in a state of their choice in an attempt to wrest or secure control of that state, as you saw earlier in the case of Wisconsin and Alex. They can also choose from one of 3 support actions. And support actions, on the other hand, either allow you to move your candidate to another state for campaigning purposes, or possibly to perform things like a fundraise action where you get more money, or a register action where you get to register more voters for your particular party. So that's a total of 6 possible actions: 3 support actions, traveling, fundraising, registering, and 3 direct actions, advertising, campaigning, and politicking. Each individual card, however, only offers a subset of 4 of those actions. So a large part of the strategy of this game is deciding which card to play and when to play it, and which cards perhaps you're better off holding on to. Each player starts with a hand of 5 cards, as you can see along the bottom of the screen. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to zoom in on this first card. If I was playing this card on my turn, I could perform a travel action that would allow me to move my candidate up to 4 adjacent states. I could also choose to play a fundraise action, which would add $80 million, or I could also perform a register action, which would allow me to gain 8 decided voters for my party. So you can see all the support actions, the 3 support actions: travel, fundraise, and register, are along the left edge of the card. Along the right edge of the card, we would find the advertise action up here, but this card doesn't offer an advertise action, but it does offer a campaign action. I could spend $60 million, and that campaign action would allow me to place up to 6 registered voters in North Carolina and or Virginia and or Tennessee and or Kentucky. So I can place those 6 voters any which way that I wanted it in any combination. That would be assuming that my candidate was located in one of those 4 states, which he's not. So in this particular instance, I would not be able to use this card to play a campaign action. If you recall, my special ability was that when I take an advertise or a campaign or politic action, I would get to place a voter in the card's reference state. Again, the reference state showing along the top edge over here on the left. So in this case, I'd get a bonus voter placed in Minnesota. Let's contrast that to this 4th card here. So if I played this 4th card, I could perform a travel action where I could fly, in this case, to any one city. There are 10 cities in the game, 10 states that have cities. So I could fly to any one of those states, and then I could move in up to 1 additional adjacent state away, or I could reverse that. I could also use this card, let's go on the left edge. So I can't use this card to perform a fundraise action, but I could use it to perform a violet register action. There's no campaign action along the right edge, but along the upper right edge, I could perform an advertise action. I could spend $20 million to advertise on gender equality, or I could spend $40 million to advertise double that amount for gender equality. And or I could spend $20 million to advertise on reproductive rights, or $40 million to advertise twice on reproductive rights. When you advertise, you place 1 voter from your registered supply in each one of the states that focuses on the particular issue at hand. Finally, I could use this card to perform a politic action. Politic actions are described along the bottom edge. Here I could take an immediate or an instant politic action, I think it's referred to in the game, called social media post. That would allow me to take 9 voters from the undecided main voter supply, placing 1 each in a state in each region of the map. If you remember, I said we start with a 105 card deck, but when you're playing 2-player game, there are 15 specific cards that are removed from the deck, mainly to speed up the game slightly. So that's 90 cards less 5 for my starting hand, less 5 for Alex's starting hand. So that's a total of 80 cards, which are then divided equally into 3 different decks to make up an August deck, a September deck, and an October deck. When I'm playing a card and deciding what action to choose, I also have to think about the debate. The first debate would get played when the August deck empties. Then at the end of that particular round, we would start the first debate. The first debate takes place in Seattle, and there are 6 issues that the first debate's going to be focused on. In this case, the issue of education and conservation, affordable housing. This is surveillance state. This one is drug trafficking, 31 electoral votes. Over here, if I highlight the military, which is a total of 27 electoral votes, you can see that the states that care about the military are Nevada and Nebraska and Virginia. And you're going to see how the debate works when we get there, but suffice it to say that in preparation for a debate, I want to be sure that I have cards in my hand that focus on the issues that are going to be discussed in the debate. The debate issues are shown along the upper right edge of the card. Hopefully between now and the end of August, when that deck empties out, I will have accumulated some cards that I can use. After that, when the September deck runs out, the second debate's going to be in New York, and it's going to focus on gender equality and reproductive rights, LGBT issues, taxes and energy and jobs. That's the second debate. I'm not even sure we're going to get that far for this playthrough. Probably I'll only play through the end of the first debate. I am the starting player. My program chose a random player to start with, chose me. So is my turn. And again, I start with I have $120 million in my war chest and 8 registered Democratic voters that I have available to me to place in states using different kinds of actions. I'm in Minnesota because that's my home state. Let's look at my cards. Well, I know, as I said earlier, I can't use this card to play a campaign action because I'm not in any one of the listed states. I have 3 different cards that have Politick Actions on them. I'm going to choose this card. This second card in my hand, Diverse Strategy. Again, it's an instant action politic card. There are 3 types of politic cards. One's an instant action. It takes effect immediately. There are ongoing actions, which are represented by an infinity symbol, which you play face up in front of you and have ongoing abilities. And there are also response politic cards, which you hold in your hand, but you play them when it's not your turn to interrupt or to change what your opponent is doing. For my first turn of the game, I think I'm going to perform this Politick Action Diverse Strategy, which says that I get to draw 2 cards and play them, but I have to choose and take a different action with each card. So on the one hand, I'm going to be able to play 2 cards in this hand as opposed to the normal 1 card per turn. But it's a little bit of a gamble because I don't know what cards I'm going to be drawing. I am going to choose Diverse Strategy as my action, so I'm going to click there. That card gets discarded from my hand, and now I've got 2 new cards. So this one has an Advertise Action, but no campaign action. This one has neither. This first card that I was dealt has a Politick Action. This one's ongoing, October Surprise. This one looks like a response type Politick Action called Change of Plans, but I think I am going to use this card for the Advertise Action. I could choose to advertise on affordable housing once or twice, $20 million per issue, so I could either spend $20 or $40 million. It looks like there are 4 states, so if I was going to advertise once on affordable housing, I'd have to place 1 of my voters in each of the states that are blinking. So that would be a total of 4 of my 8 starting voters. I could advertise twice on affordable housing, in which case I'd be using all my 8 voters, and then I couldn't advertise any further. On the other hand, I could advertise on conservation. That also has 4 states that care about conservation. So I could, for example, choose to advertise on one of these issues. I could choose to advertise on, say, affordable housing and conservation, which would use up all 8 of my registered voters, but I couldn't then advertise any further because you have to have the number of voters necessary in order to be able to place 1 voter per issue per state that cares about that particular issue. Let's go ahead and click over there. And up here, I can choose which issues that I want to advertise in. Let's say click on affordable housing. Well, you can see Minnesota cares about affordable housing, but because that's my home state, I already have a pretty good majority up there. I also currently have the majority in New Mexico, and the majority over there on the East Coast in Rhode Island. So if I advertised on affordable housing, and if I advertised twice, I could even the odds down there in Louisiana, and even the number of voters. Now, in Louisiana, the Republicans still are the primary tiebreaker, so at 2-2, they would still have the majority for purposes of the Louisiana's, 8 electoral votes. But that would strengthen my position in Louisiana. On the other hand, I could choose to advertise on conservation. That would allow me to play a voter up there in Alaska. Again, that would tie voters, so it would still be a Republican-held state. I would boost my position in Oregon there. I would strengthen my position in Wyoming, where I'm down 2-0. I would be able to place 1, or if I advertise twice on this issue, I'd place 2 voters in Wyoming and even the odds there, or I would just strengthen my lead in Illinois. I think I'm going to stick with affordable housing. I'm going to advertise on both issues of affordable housing. So this is going to cost me $20 million times 2, or $40 million, and I'm going to have to place all 8 of my starting registered voters. 2 voters in Minnesota, 2 in New Mexico, 2 down there in Louisiana, and 2 over here in Rhode Island. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to perform that action. Again, my program is going to take care of all the bookkeeping. Now I have to play this card, but choose a different action. Maybe I'll just use this for fundraising, or maybe even for voters, since I just used up all 8 of my voters. I'm going to use this card to register 9 voters to get my registered voters back up from 0 to 9. So that's going to end my action, and now it's my turn, I should say, and now it's Alex's turn. So you can see that performing different actions, in this case I performed a diverse strategy action, which allowed me to draw 2 cards and perform an action on each one of those cards. So depending on the actions that players take, the deck dwindles down to 0, either at a slow pace or a faster pace. So part of this game is also, again, timing when the debate's going to take place. So after my turn was over, I refreshed my hand. So if let's see, I played diverse strategy, which dropped my hand size down to 4. I then drew 2 cards, which brought my hand size back up to 6. Then I played those 2 cards, so I was down to 4. At the end of my turn, I refresh my hand, so I draw another card. And what did I get? I got I got another change of plans card. Oh, and this one does pertain to the debates, issues of the first debate. Note that little black dot there along the top edge. So at least I have 1 card now in my hand that's going to help me out when the debate comes along. So probably I will hold on to this card so I have it available to me, because that's part of the game, preparing for the debates and making sure you have cards in your hand that pertain to the issues that debate is going to be focusing on. So anyway, let's get back to Alex's starting hand here, and let's decide what she is going to do. She has 2 cards that she can use for purposes of the debate. This one, but it's a green dot, you notice, and this one also is a green dot. Now, why green as opposed to black? Well, this one focuses on the debate issue of affordable housing, which is one of the main issues of the first debate, but it also focuses on health care. So that would open up what's called a rabbit trail when you're actually playing the debate. And I'll talk more about rabbit trails when I'm in the middle of the debate, but effectively it adds more issues. It would be as if I was asked a question on the subject of affordable housing, which was one of the main topics of the debate, but then I sort of went off on another tangent and started talking about health care. Well, once I start talking about health care, that means now my opponents can also start talking about health care, and that possibly opens up other cards that they can play on the issue of health care now, instead of just the issues that the 6 issues that they had to start with in the debate. So that's all part of the debate strategy. Again, we'll talk more about rabbit trails and issues and talking points when we get to the first debate. Alex is in her home state of Wisconsin, so she wouldn't be able to use this card for a campaign action because it's nowhere near Wisconsin. This one is in the southeast, again, nowhere near Wisconsin. This one, Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So I can't perform a campaign action this turn. I could perform an advertise action over here and advertise on jobs and or reproductive rights. Over here, I could advertise on surveillance or the military. I could advertise on drug trafficking, which 3 states with 31 electoral votes care about, or advertise on the subject of reproductive rights, which 4 states with 31 electoral votes care about. Let's see, if we're going to use this card. Well, I'm currently in Wisconsin. I could travel first to, say, Kentucky, and then subsequently in the next turn use this card to perform a campaign action. I think that's what Alex is going to do. I could use this card, so I would be using, this card would end up having me choose both cards that are my debate cards. I'd use this card to travel, and then this card to campaign. Maybe that's not a good choice. I don't know. Well, let's not care about it right now. Let's use card 5 to travel 5 states, get me down to Kentucky. So I am going to be using my debate cards, but it's the beginning of the game. I think odds are pretty good that I'm going to be getting more cards that have issues, the debate issues that pertain to the first debate. So I'm not overly concerned about that. So let's travel. Oh, yeah. So Larry had a change of plans card, which he could use to require that Alex now choose an action other than travel, if I wanted to play that card. Well, if you recall, change of plans was my only card that cared about the issues of the first debate. So I am not going to be playing that card to change Alex's plan. So I'm going to hold it silently in my hand. Of course, when you're playing a multiplayer game, my program needs to alert me to the fact that Larry has that card in his hand, and he could play it to interrupt Alex's choice, but I am not going to do that. So I'm going to probably be saying no. Well, since I'm holding on to that card, I'm going to be prompted every time Alex picks a particular action. So now Alex can travel up to 5 adjacent states away. She is going to go down to Kentucky, which is only 2 states away. So she just traveled, so now she used up 2 of her 5 states, and she's just going to stop in Kentucky, so she's ready to perform that campaign action in the next turn. So she is done, and now it's back to me. I know I'm going to hold on to this card for purposes of the debate. Maybe I'll take advantage of social media posts. We saw that earlier. So social media post says I can take 9 voters from the undecided voter supply and place 1 into a state in each one of the 9 regions of the game. That's pretty powerful. Being able to place 9 voters in one shot is pretty good. So I think I'm going to use that for my turn. Okay, so I'm starting over here on the Pacific Coast. So I'm pretty strong in California right now, pretty strong in Hawaii. I'm down 1 to zip in Alaska. So let's even the odds in Alaska a little bit. Again, it's not going to shift the electoral votes. It will allow me to tie up the number of voters in Alaska. In the West, let's place a voter in Nevada. In the Great Plains. So here I am pretty much down in most of these states. It looks like I'm pretty weak in the Great Plains, other than in my home state of Minnesota. Maybe Minnesota wasn't a good choice for my home state. I probably should have given that more thought. Looks like Oklahoma has 7 electoral votes. Let's put 1 in Oklahoma. Okay, for the Great Lakes. Oh, so in the Great Lakes, if I place a voter back in Wisconsin, I'll tie it up again, and Wisconsin's tiebreaker is the Libertarians, which are not in the game, so its secondary tiebreaker is the Democrats, so that would allow me to get back my 10 electoral votes and even the score up again to 269 each. I think I'm going to do that. So now you can see that immediately the new score has been reflected. But in this particular case, when I was playing the game, when I place a voter in Wisconsin, I would go up, grab the Wisconsin tile, take it from the Republican track, move it to the Democratic track, and compress all the tokens, and you would see that the score was evened out again. Again, all that's handled automatically by my program. In the Appalachian region, yeah, for sure, I want to tie up in the big battleground state of Ohio. In the Northeast, let's put a voter in New Hampshire, put a little pressure there. In the Mid-Atlantic region, yeah, I'll put a voter in North Carolina. In the Southeast, for sure, in Florida, with its 29 electoral votes. And finally, the Gulf Coast, again, let's get a voter in Texas with its 38 electoral votes. And because Illinois was the reference state on that card, I got a bonus voter in Illinois, which only just makes my majority in Illinois that much stronger, which is not anything to scoff about because Illinois has 20 electoral votes, so that's a pretty important state as well. Okay, back to Alex. So she just moved down to Kentucky so that she could perform this campaign action. It looks like she got dealt another card that half pertained to the debate, the first debate. Looks like she has a card here that focuses on education, which was one of the 6 topics of the first debate. But this card also focuses on gun control in Texas. And that's pretty big because that's 38 electoral votes. So that would definitely be a card I might want to hold on to for Alex. Anyway, for now, she is going to perform this campaign action over here. Again, I am not going to interrupt. Okay, so remember, Alex had a special ability as the party favorite. She can place up to 2 unregistered voters in any of these flashing states. These are the states that were listed on the card that she could campaign in. Obviously, the state she's in, which is Kentucky, as well as these other states that are nearby, even though they're in other regions. So she can place a total up to 6 voters, the first 2 of which are unregistered voters, and the other 4 would be registered voters. She doesn't have to spend all 4 of those registered voters, but she is limited to 3 voters per state, again, for purposes of being the party favorite. Where are we going to have Alex campaign? If I go big in Virginia, she could steal those 13 electoral votes. Yeah, let's put 3 of the 6 voters in Virginia. So that's 1, 2. These are both unregistered, and now the third one's going to be a registered voter. So now I'm down to 11 registered voters. Yeah, we'll put the other 3 in Maryland and steal those 10 electoral votes. Okay, that ends Alex's turn. So now you could see that the score has shifted quite dramatically. Alex has a lead of 292 electoral votes to my 246. Back to me. I can also use this for campaign action if I was in North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, or Kentucky. No, it looks like Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee. But I think I'm going to travel down to Tennessee. So which card? I could use card 2, 3, or 4. I only need to get from Wisconsin down to Tennessee, and I can sneak through Illinois here. So effectively, what's that, 3 states away? No, wait, where am I right now? I'm in Minnesota, actually. So I'm up here. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, still 3 states away. I travel south into Iowa, take my bus down to Missouri, my campaign bus, and then slide over here to Tennessee. So I could just get by using this card. Do I want to give up this card? Well, this card has Politick Actions on it. This one is my debate card. I certainly don't want to use that to travel. I can't use this one because I'd have to fly. Are there any state? Where are these cities? Yeah, so flying doesn't help me. I could fly, for example, to Illinois, but then I'd be able to move one more adjacent state. Well, that would get me into Kentucky. So I suppose I could use that card to get to Kentucky and campaign, because this card, yeah, this card does care about Kentucky. I did promise I was going to keep this game speeding up. You know what? I'm going to just use this card to go by bus to Tennessee. So I decided I'm going to steer clear of Kentucky because that's where Alex is, and I'm going to campaign in nearby Tennessee. Which used all 3 of those travel actions. So I'm now in Tennessee, all set up for my campaign action on my next turn. So what do we have here for Alex? Okay, that's a campaign action over there. And this one's another one that has the debate. She could use this for the debate. Oh, and she's in Kentucky, and so she could use this for a campaign action and not have to worry about moving. And it does, it would allow her to get into, strengthen her position up in Ohio. Yeah, I think she's going to campaign. As long as she's still in Kentucky, she's going to use this for a campaign action. So again, this is going to cost her, I'm not going to interrupt, this is going to cost her another $60 million. It's going to drop her down from 80 to 20, and obviously that will get paid as soon as I place my first voter, once I commit. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead up here and place 3 voters in Ohio. That's a key battleground state. I certainly don't want to give up control of that. So it spent my $60 million. The first voter came from the unregistered supply. The second voter comes from the unregistered supply. I'm going to put a 3rd voter in Ohio. That's going to come out of my registered supply of 8. So now I'm down to 7. And I have 3 voters remaining that I can place. And probably I want to strengthen my position in Indiana. Yeah, I'm going to place 3 voters in Indiana. And basically tell my Democratic colleague to stay clear. My plan was to campaign using this card now that I'm in Tennessee. So this is going to cost me $80 million, remember, as opposed to 60. So I'll be broke. I'll have no money, and well, I'm going to be placing up to 6 registered voters. So I'll have very few registered voters left too after this turn. Both of us are going to be in a position to have to beef up our war chests and our registered voters before we take any more serious actions. For now, let's place 2 voters in North Carolina. That'll give me the lead there and narrow the score. So that's 2 voters so far. And I've got up to 4 other voters I can place. I think I'm going to place all 4 of those voters. I'm going to spend them and put them in Virginia, where there's 13 electoral votes. And now I've taken the lead, 274 to 264. Back to Alex, who I said, as I just mentioned, is low on funds and on voters. She's going to use card 1 over here. Well, actually, card number 16. But the first card number 1 in her hand, to register 11 voters and get her supply of registered voters back up to 15. Again, I'm not interrupting. Back to Larry. Back to me. I'll use this card to register 12 voters and I'll be back up to 15 as well. And then Alex, who's also low on funds, needs to fundraise. Looks like she's got 2 rabbit trail of debate cards here and 1 good solid debate card without rabbit trails that focuses on affordable housing and conservation, both issues being part of that first debate. So she's going to use this card to fundraise and get $90 million added to her war chest, bring her back up to 110. And obviously I need to fundraise as well. Now this card is my card that I want to hold on to for purposes of the debate. So I could either use, and this card also has some rabbit trails, but also focuses on affordable housing. I'm going to use this card to fundraise and gain $90 million. Back to Alex. Okay, so now we're chock full of voters and money. Oh, and she got another. So she's good here as far as the campaign is concerned, although these are the only 2 cards available to her for campaigning. So maybe we're going to advertise instead. Yeah, let's advertise. Let's use this card here to advertise. She's going to advertise on both issues, reproductive rights and on the issue of jobs. So this is going to cost her $40 million, 20 per issue. She'll be placing 8 of her 15 workers in all of the states that are flashing. So she's fine out here, and she's fine here. But I have my eye here up on Michigan. Again, another battleground state. And way up here in New Hampshire, I could strengthen my position again. I was strong in New Hampshire. Now it's tied, but I still break that tie because I have the tiebreaker. Yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and do this. So it's going to cost me $40 million and 8 of my 15 voters, me being Alex. No, actually, so she pays $20 million per issue. But she only has to spend 6 of her voters. Again, 2 of them come from the undecided supply. So she should be left with 9 when she's done. And good. Ooh, yeah. I need to put a bigger stance down in Ohio and maybe even in Michigan. I think I'm going to travel north. I'm going to use this card to travel up to 3 states away and get myself up to Ohio. And stop there. Okay. Alex. Oh, yeah. She has her eye on those 16 electoral votes up there in Michigan. She can advertise again on jobs and reproductive rights. LGBT rights, rather. Just to grab Michigan. So this is going to cost her seven of her 9 remaining voters $40 million to advertise on these 2 issues. Yeah, and she'll grab these electoral votes up here in the battleground state of Michigan. That's pretty important to her. She has the lead again, 280 to 258 electoral votes. Okay. So I just traveled to Ohio, and I am going to use this card. So this card is Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. Yeah, so we're going to campaign here. Can place up to 6 voters. I'm going to put 4 in Ohio and take back the lead in Ohio. So now I'm 276 to 262. And I'm going to grab the lead. I'm going to grab Michigan as well and put my 2 remaining voters there to grab its 16 electoral votes. 292 to 246 as it currently stands. Alex. Power play. Take 3 voters from the undecided voter supply, place them in any combination, California, Texas, Florida, the big states, basically, with the big electoral counts. Yeah, Alex is going to play power play. Now, I could, if I was, So, where's my change of plans cards? It's this one. It's my only card that focuses wholly on the issues at hand on the debate. I've got this one. Yeah, I still really don't want to interrupt. So I'm going to hold on to that card and let her go ahead and use power play. And she is clearly going to go, she has 3 voters to spend, and she's going to put them all in California and grab the 55 electoral votes. That's a 110 vote spread. But only temporarily until I get back in California and campaign some more. 301 to 237. Poll win. Gain 3 registered voters for each region in which you control the most number of states. You know, right? I want to hold on to that and use it at some point, but right now I want money more than I want. I could use this for $80 million. Let's do that. Let's use this to beef up by $80 million. And then I'll worry about advertising in California and Louisiana on my next turn. Alex is also low on funds and voters. She's going to use this card, fundraise for $70 million. Back to me. Now I'm going to go back here and advertise on gender equality. That'll get me back in California, get back those votes, and affordable housing, which will get me the lead in Louisiana. All right. Alex is going to use this card for a register action. So now she's got plenty of money and voters. So where was that poll win? So what is this again? Gain 3 registered voters for every region in which you control the most number of states. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 regions, 12 voters. Can't do better than that. Let's use poll win to gain 12 voters. Up to 16. Okay. I should talk about this kind of card. This is a different kind of campaign card where you campaign in your home region. It works basically the same way. It just, instead of listing states, it would be campaigning in your home region. So in the case of Alex, she'd be campaigning in the Great Lakes region since she's from the great state of Wisconsin. So maybe she'll use this at some point. And we're down here to 3 cards in August. But unless Larry plays a card like Diverse Strategy again, of course we don't know if he has Diverse Strategy in his hand, but unless he plays a card like that, I, as being Alex, have another turn to go before we head into the debate. So, and when we get to the debate, both of us are going to travel to Seattle for free, because that's where the debate is being held. So, what if I use... Oh, we have 3 good debate cards here. What if I use this card to get to, say, Michigan? And then I'll use this card on the last turn of August to campaign up here in the Great Lakes area. Yeah, let's travel. Get all the way up to Michigan. And I'll stop there. 2 cards remaining. So how do I look? I've got 2 good debate cards and 1 so-so debate card. And I've got $50 million and 16 voters. Ooh, Texas. All right, cost me $40 million and 2 voters. easily. That's a lot of money to spend on 2 voters, but that's an awful lot of electoral votes. And I've evened it up in California for now. Not a great position, but at least I still have the majority there. So I am going to go ahead with this Advertise Action and grab Texas's votes. And now this is going to be the last turn of August with 1 card remaining in the deck. And what was Alex's plan? She was going to use this to campaign up in the Great Lakes. Again, we're not going to interrupt that. So let's put 2 voters in Michigan and grab those electoral votes. One voter in Wisconsin and grab the lead there. And I've got 3 left, and I can only put 3 in one place. This wouldn't get me Illinois, but it would certainly tie me in Illinois. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first debate of this presidential election. So we both traveled to Washington. Both of us are now in Washington. And Alex is way down. Because I just grabbed Texas, the score doesn't look so good for Alex right now. So let's talk about how this debate works. So here's the debate arena. Here are the 6 issues that are currently the topic of this particular debate. There are 3 rounds to the debate. Also, at the beginning of the debate, I should point out that the turn order is changed so that the player who has the most electoral votes goes first. The player who has the least electoral votes goes last. I was first before. I'm still in first place, so I take the first turn in the debate, and that'll be the turn order going in for the rest of the game, for the rest of the month of September, and then the turn order might shift again prior to the second debate, depending upon where the electoral count stands at that point. So there are 3 rounds to the debate. During each round, each one of us can play 1 card or pass. And when we play a card, we're going to basically take the debate topics we're going to be talking about and causing these tokens to shift either this way toward the Democratic side or this way toward the Republican side. And you can see there are up to 4 spaces in each track. If we were playing with the Libertarians, there'd be a Libertarian track up here. But as you move these tokens, if I move them over here, then at the end of the debate, I would get 1 voter placed in each one of the states pertaining to those issues. If I got up to here, I'd get 2 voters, 3 voters, or possibly up to a maximum of 4 voters on any one topic. Obviously, the same holds true for Alex. So for my first play of the debate, obviously I want to either play this one, which is on drug trafficking and surveillance state, but this is my strong card: education, surveillance, drugs, and military. I'm going to play this card, and that's going to cause all 4 of those topics to move to my side of the debate arena. Right now, no party has control of these topics. I play this card, I will then have control of 4 of them. Now, still debate round 1. Alex gets to play a card. So she's got 3 cards that are all good. Yeah, so she plays this card. It's going to move surveillance back to the center, and it'll move military back to the center, and move drug trafficking to the center and back to space 1 of her track. I think that's the card that she is going to play for now. And now we're in debate round 2 of 3. So I can play this card and get surveillance back to my track 1 and get drug trafficking back to the center. I'm going to do that. Alex, she's much stronger here, so she this will move surveillance and drugs back to the center. No, surveillance back to the center, and drugs, housing, and conservation. This is a pretty strong card for her. Okay, the last card of the debate. So the only card I could possibly play is this one, which opens up rabbit trails. So essentially, it would move affordable housing back to the center and bring on foreign aid and international trade, and both of those would then be placed in the center and move to my track 1. So that's good for me because it gets me more voters placed in the states pertaining to foreign aid and international trade. International trade, I think, isn't that California? Yeah. So that would, I think I definitely want to get my majority back in California. I have the majority, but we're tied in California. So while this would get me foreign aid and international trade on my side of the track, it would open up other possibilities for Alex to play, because then she could not only play cards having to do with the current 6 issues on the board, she could then play cards also having to do with foreign aid and international trade. So I don't know if she has any of those cards. But it's a little bit of a gamble. Let's go with it. So housing back to the center and foreign aid and international trade are now on the board. And here we are with Alex, and yes, it has opened up another possibility for Alex. She can use this card, which would move foreign aid back to her side, because there are 2 foreign aid cards. International trade would get moved back to the center. This is looking like a pretty good card for her. And immigration, it would add immigration as a rabbit trail. And this is the last turn of the debate. This card just moves affordable housing to her side and moves conservation to the second track, the second space of her track. Let's actually analyze this in more detail, as long as it's the last turn of the debate and we have a little bit of time here. So what does Alex want to do here? So if she chooses this card, that's going to end up with housing in track 1, drugs in track 1, and conservation on track 2. And then these 3 issues would remain for me in track 1. So drug trafficking, affordable housing, and conservation. So drug trafficking gets her strong and improves her position in Colorado. She'd get 2 voters placed in conservation. That's looking pretty good to her. she'd get Oregon and Alaska and Illinois. But she doesn't need 2 voters. Even 1 voter would get her Illinois and Alaska. She has Alaska currently. She's tied, so it would just improve her stance in Alaska. All right, so that's one choice. Let's go back and analyze the second. So the second choice is playing this card. So this would put foreign aid, international trade would fall back to the center. Well, this would hurt Larry bad. This would move international trade back to the center, move foreign aid over here, and this and leaves education on track 1 for me. What does education do for me? That's Texas, where I currently have the lead. But this card is enticing. So it will give me foreign aid, immigration, international trade, conservation, and drug trafficking, all on my track 1, if I'm reading this correctly. So what does that do? Foreign aid would get would win her votes in Maryland, and it would tie her in D.C. Was the conservation we already looked at, which just strengthens her position in Alaska, but gets her the 20 electoral votes in Illinois. Was it drug trafficking and immigration, I think, was another one. So it wouldn't drastically change the picture. So that's 30. So that would shift 30 votes as opposed to 27. I think this is the better card to play. Okay, so once I play this card, it's going to move foreign aid over here. It's going to move international trade back to the center. It's going to introduce immigration and move it here. So I will be left with foreign aid, conservation, drug trafficking, and immigration here. And Larry over here would only have education, so it would strengthen his position in Texas. But then, so Larry would get 1 voter placed in Texas, and then I'd get 1 voter placed in conservation and the drug trafficking and foreign aid and immigration states. And all that's going to happen pretty quickly. So let's take a look at the log and see. So here we are, voter reaction. Larry placed 1 vote for education. 1 voter for education, increasing Democratic votes in Texas. So he basically just strengthened his lead there. Then he refreshes his hand back to up to a size of 5 cards. So he draws 3 cards. And then Alan gets to place 1 voter in conservation, drug trafficking, foreign aid, and immigration, which affects all of these states. So going into round 13, Larry still has a strong lead, mostly because I grabbed Texas. So it's 292 to 246. But as you can see, lots of things can change, lots of things can swing in this game. Very exciting as players play different kinds of cards, different kinds of strategies, plan for the next debate, which of course would take place here in New York at the end of September, dealing with gender equality, reproductive rights, LGBT rights, jobs, energy, and taxes. Lots to think about in this game. I have not programmed the solo mode of this game, but I will, and at some point I'll present a solo playthrough of Campaign Trail. But hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how the game plays, what it's like. I think this gives you a really good idea of what the game is like, how it plays. If I had any bugs in my program and made any mistakes, please post comments. Thanks for watching. Take care.